Okay, so here's a quick video to explain the different sections, the chord changes in the Beatles tune, I Want to Hold Your Hand. By the end of the video, you'll be able to play along with me while I play along to the recording of the song, making the chord changes and keeping a simple, straight quarter note or steady beat strum along with the tune. Big picture, of course, is to make sure that you have some sort of sheet music to follow along. The chart that I'm using comes from the website Sheet Music Direct. I highly recommend that you use theirs, and you'll see it annotated here on the screen while we work through it. So step one is to make sense of the chords as written on the chart. And you'll notice that I've gone ahead and boxed off the verse section. We're going to look at the verse first, even though it's obviously not the first part of the song. And the first thing we'll want to do is make sense of all the chords, the G, the D, E minor, and B7. Once we've done that, we'll go through, make sense of how to change between the four as they are the pattern that makes up the verse. And then from there, we'll go ahead and make sense of what's going on with the song along with the recording per section. So the first thing we want to do is once you have all four chords sort of figured out how to play them, is talk about how to actually change them. Now, this four-finger G chord is a fairly simple change to go to the next chord D. Simply put, all we're going to do is move our first and second fingers and our pinky finger out of the way. The trick here is to not move the third finger, okay? So remember, with chord changes, the idea is to always look for the shortest distance movement first, do it, and to make sure that if you have a finger that doesn't move, that simply put, you just choose not to move it. So from our G chord, our first step would be to not move our third finger. Our second step, of course, is to look for the index finger. It moves the shortest distance down 2 strings. Next, the middle finger across the board to string 1, then we can lift the pinky finger off. Our next chord change is the D to the E minor. Going from this chord change is a little trickier because we don't have a direct path. But again, the trick is to not lift the entire guitar hand off the guitar. We don't want to lift the entire hand off the guitar and then try to make the change. Instead, what we want to try to do is keep the D chord as present as possible as we move our first finger. Now, our first movement is going to be our middle finger, but as you notice, it can't really get to string 5 without the first finger being in its way. So in this case, it's okay to lift off the first finger as you move the middle finger up to string 5. Suffice that the ring finger does not follow until the middle finger is in place. That is, again, you make the change by allowing the first finger to lift off and the second finger moves straight up to string 5. Don't move the ring finger until it's done moving. Then, ring finger can follow. Quick review, our G chord, the move to D, then the move to E minor. Okay. Next will be our move from E minor to B7. And just to review, I am going through the chords in the order that you see on the chart. And so just to remind you, the order that you see on the chart goes from the G to the D to the E minor and to the B7 here. We'll talk about for how many strums we play each of these chords in just one moment. So how do we get from E minor to B7? For a lot of us, B7 might be a chord we haven't played before. But it's important to notice that between the two chords there is a finger that does not move, and that is the middle finger. So the first step is to see which fingers remaining move the shortest distance. Since I only have one other finger on the guitar, that of course is going to be my third finger. And the nice thing is that third finger only moves one string. Step 1 in this chord change, don't move the middle finger. Step 2, allow the ring finger to move one string. The index finger can follow, the pinky finger can follow behind. E minor, B7. Next, how do I get from B7 to G? Now this will seem like a tricky change for a lot of us. The big picture idea here is to not lift the hand completely off the guitar. Here's the B7. And for a lot of us, because we see the G chord as being farther down the neck, we think we should probably lift our hand completely off and try to replace the chord. But of course, that's going to cause us to get the shape in the wrong place or possibly play the shape on the wrong strings. So to avoid all of that issue, it's very simple. Notice that the B7 and the G chord, most of the fingers are both on different strings and different frets. So we want to try to avoid that diagonal motion of trying to do all of it at once at one time. Instead, what we're going to do is choose to make the shift movement, that is to the new frets, first. So, step one in making the chord change, very simply, slide the hand down one set of frets. What you'll immediately notice is that your pinky finger is where it needs to be to make this chord change. So now we have a finger that doesn't have to move. Also notice that your other three fingers, your third finger, your first finger, and your second finger, all only have to move one string. They're now on their correct frets. They just have to move to a new string. So in review, B7, slide the hand, ring finger, first and second all equidistantly only move one string, and that chord change becomes relatively simple. So in review, the four chords, G, third finger does not need to move as we go to D. When going to E minor, the trick here is to move the middle finger before you let go of the ring finger to build that muscle memory. When going to B7, your middle finger does not move. And when going from B7 to G, the whole hand shifts, putting the pinky finger in the correct place, allowing the chord change to happen. Now, that being said, let's take a second and actually play along to the tune. You'll notice that I'm skipping over the intro, and that's okay for now. There's a very simple reason as to why I'm doing that. Simply put, the intro appears in another part of the song, in the bridge, and we'll see that later. So since we know this part of the verse section has words, and we know we can hear words relatively well, and that'll help us to sort of mitigate where the steady beat is, we'll go ahead and learn the verse section first. So let's go ahead and play along. When you listen to the intro, as you'll see what I do here in a second, take a moment to, as you hear that intro, pluck along the steady beat, sort of as a muted chord. Then once we hear the intro going, we'll go ahead and make sure that we're playing along with the correct steady beat. All we're going to do is play each chord one time. What you'll notice on the chart for now is that each chord is given its own one measure. The rhythm we want to play is written right here. Ta, T, 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 T. We're going to hold off on that for just one moment. We're going to go ahead and play the G chord once at the onset of that measure, the D chord at the onset of its measure, and the same thing with E minor and B7. Let's take a moment to hear what that's going to sound like. Find the steady beat. Here comes the G. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.